6, we be in the mix with that rare candy paint job on the whip. I need food for the kids, money for the rent. Fuck a lockdown, baby, I can't do that shit. And I don't never vote, cause I'm fucking broke. And either way, I know the police ain't gon' leave me alone. On a plane by to visit Glen Rock, need crypto, told me I should bring the Glock with me. So I packed up my piece and I'm sliding. Cause we might get caught up in a riot. Middle finger Trump, middle finger Biden. Fuck a left, fuck a right, is you riding? Know you love to see it, dudes rocking. Ain't no politics, baby, we just talking. From the birds to the bricks, we be in the mix with that rare candy paint job on the whip. Who you with?
Okay, guys, I'm nervous. I'm a rookie. I'm a rookie all over again. I was just talking about it. Anytime we do like a massive music episode, I never feel prepared enough. Whereas when we talk about health and science and stuff, we just wing it. Let's just go. It doesn't matter. Facts, facts, whatever, any of that matters. But we're talking about Roxy music today, and I'm glad to have a guest who, it was funny, when I was planning the episode, I don't feel like I had told anybody yet. I'm not even sure I told Sai yet. But I was talking to our guest here, Vincent Nappi, who had just said, like, hey, after the Prince episode, if you guys ever do Roxy music or even like Brian Ferry, hit me up. I was like, dude, like last week I was just thinking about doing that. So I knew we had to. And I checked the date on that message, February 28th, 2024. These things take a while. These things take a while. Our Miles Davis episode's like a year in the making at this point. And these things take a while. But yes, of course, our guest today is Vincent Nappi. You can follow him on Instagram. I think is the best place to follow you because that's got all of your work, your portfolio, and your cool videos, your time-lapse videos that I really enjoy. And it's Vincent_Nappi, Nappi. And Vincent, you got a nice little following on there.
I guess so. It's only been like 10 years since I got coerced to join Instagram, and now I'm chained to it. So,
well, you're not what I like about it is that you make sure there's something coming out a lot, and I feel like your videos, like you do the did you paint today and stuff, there's kind of this like coach element to it. Like I would are you trying to do you want like everybody to? I feel like you want everybody to put that artistic product out there and stuff, and instead of just being like this, I'm working on something. I'm working on something. You'll see it in a year. Like you're kind of really documenting the process. I feel like, which I really like.
Well, you gotta just put stuff out there. Like you guys well know that.
Mm-hmm.
You just have to ship. And people get so hung up. Is it perfect? Is it right? Is it good? Yeah. It's like, no. Did you do it?
There's always tomorrow. There's always tomorrow to be perfect.
That's mañana, you'll be dead mañana, You got to get it out today. So
yeah, I agree. Now, we were talking about somebody interesting who's kind of a fun cult hero of this podcast because he lived not far from me for a long time, and it's Thomas Kinkade. He's a painter. He's the painter of light. You want to talk about a prolific painter, dude? I mean, you want to talk about a guy that put shit out and was outward about promoting it. Thomas Kinkade is so funny to me because I love the idea of this kind of Danny McBride character of a man, kind of Kenny Powers, the painter. I love the idea of him painting these just quite lovely accent pieces for people's living room. I picture myself being way drunker than I plan to be at some old woman's house. You're like, why am I hammered? And then you look up and you're like, there's the painter of light right in the corner, and he winks at you and he's like, you know why? And I feel like that's the case with Thomas Kinkade. But what you seem to know a decent amount about him. I don't know a lot about his history in the art world and stuff. What do you know about him?
Well, probably about as much as you. I think I was exposed to his backstory because of the illustrator James Gurney, who, if anyone ever picked up the Dinotopia books as a kid, you've seen his work. So he's big in the illustration community for his blog. He was like one of the OG Blogspot artists, just sharing all kinds of good information. And he would talk about his background. And one of the main things that he did when he was a young guy was he worked on the Ralph Bakshi movie Fire and Ice, for anyone that remembers that. So James Gurney and Thomas Kinkade were the guys that painted all of the backdrops for that movie.
Wow.
So they're just in the Bakshi sweatshop side by side with Frank Frazetta coming in and art directing, to tell them, hey, kid, move that tree over, do this like that. And so they cranked out all those backdrops. And they also took this crazy sketching journey where they just jumped on the back of freight trains and rode the rails like hobos and drew. And they put a book out about it. And then Thomas Kincaid went on to become the painter of light, and James Gurney went on to become the Dinotopia guy.
That's insane.
Wow. Yeah.
I mean, you want to talk about like something I encountered almost daily? Those two guys work, dude. Just seeing like a really cool Thomas Kincaid. Thomas Kincaid actually at the mall that Cy and I, the kind of mall that was central to our childhood. There was a Thomas Kincaid gallery in there.
I
they had
those.
They had. I was in Solvang, California, which is like this Dutch or not, I don't know what it is, Sweden, I can't remember, some kind of like Nordic town with like all brown buildings and stuff, and then randomly they sneak in like a Thomas Kincaid gallery and it's all his like Star Wars stuff, and it's hysterical. And I feel this I love people who like he didn't conduct himself as kind of like the person we said, the kind of like above it all, never finish anything. He's just like, nah, man, I got that same house for you every time. And it doesn't matter. And it's not the same thing, but it's also, he knew what his market was and he wanted to like live kind of like a Christian rock star lifestyle. Obviously he's had substance abuse issues, which ended up really being kind of the death of him and stuff. I mean, it was pretty bad, but you know, it is funny. Like I do think Danny McBride could do actually a loving, fun show.
Bro, when you made that comparison, I had never seen that photo that you shared. I cracked up. That was like, it was a 1-to-1. I'm like, that is Danny McBride. If he was a painter, that's what he would look like.
And what, Thomas Kincaid was reportedly peeing on a Winnie the Pooh statue outside of like with Disneyland Hotel in Anaheim. That's Danny McBride. I mean, you can do that thing. I'm sure you could work Walton Goggins into there somewhere, and then you got a show. 100%. You got a show. I just, that's something to think about, Danny. So we brought you here today to talk about, of course, this monumental band, this band that I believe just had the craziest trajectory ever, where they just got better and better and better until they stopped. Yeah. And then they stopped when they hit a pretty much a pinnacle, because I think there's no way they could have made a better album after Avalon. At least I think so. It's pretty tough to get beyond that. They just kept transcending, and it's Roxy Music. Tell me about your history with the band, because they got to be up there for you.
So I feel like a Johnny come lately, but in a roundabout way. Because I got into Brian Ferry's stuff first, and not in a deep sense, just in a casual way. You know the movie 9.5 Weeks?
Yes, I've never seen it. I know it.
Mickey Rourke and Kim Basinger.
Yes.
One of my favorite movies. But there's a great
guy who did Fatal Attraction, right? The director is the same.
Adrian Lyne.
Yes.
Yeah. So New York City, the 80s, this very sexy, gritty looking piece of cinema. One of my favorite movies. There's a great scene in it that is set to Slave to Love. So it essentially functions like a music video. And I'm like, who is this man singing? So I'm like 15, 16 going, what is this song? This is incredible. I want to live in this version of New York City in this music video, hearing Slave to Love.
Oh, yeah.
And I followed the trail backwards. And I'm like, oh, it's this guy. It's this English dude and this band, Roxy Music. And then I kind of forgot about it. Because you're 15, 16, hearing, remake and remodel is not going to do the same things for you as it is when you're older.
Yeah. But, you're right. No, you're right. Like I remember when I was a kid, my mom, I remember being this like new metal, like wigger kind of sporty kid, where I was like, I just wanted like click, click, boom. Like I wanted that to happen all the time. Just constant like Linkin Park kind of stuff. Yep. And I remember my mom playing or maybe it was just on the radio, and More Than This comes on, right? Everybody knows More Than This. It's in TurboTax commercials now. And and everybody knows that. And it comes on. I think she noticed that I liked it. But I was kind of like, oh, this is gay, because it's like 80s like love crooning stuff, and I'm into new metal. But she knows that there was this objective quality to how good it is. And then I remember shortly after iTunes kind of comes out, when you used to be able to get previews and stuff, like kind of like you click on through albums and preview stuff, and I would get these gift cards, and I would buy songs that I liked. Obviously I was an illegal downloader guy. Nobody's perfect, but I was, I mean, look, we all Kazaa and LimeWired. It happened. It was a rite of passage. It's not something I'm proud of. But anyways, I was on I was on there and I was clicking on like their other albums because I really liked the Avalon album. And then all of a sudden I'm like listening. I'm like, it sounds like dishes are breaking and like an undetuned saxophone. I'm like, what is happening? I'm like, this is the same band. And then my mom was like, yeah, they used to be weird. You know, like they used to be weird. And then I kind of left it alone. But you constantly come back to the Avalon album because that aesthetic is timeless. Everybody wants to go back to it because it's kind of Valhalla, it's Utopia, it's all of these things. The guys that got doing falconry on the cover.
Yes.
It's so cool, and you just become obsessed with it. And then when I started taking long drives down Highway 1 with my wife, vacations every year, you throw it on and you go, oh yeah, here it is.
This is what it's about.
Flesh and Blood and Avalon down Highway 1. If you listen to that album, like you can break the sound barrier. You can. You did, actually. We're going to get you right back to the episode, but I just wanted to let you guys know of a few other things we offer at Rare Candy Industries. We have a Substack with free and paid subscription options. Free subscribers get access to all written content. That includes Bob's Red Pill. That's the best thing going on the internet right now. Trust me. Paid subscribers get full access to our premium episode feed. And that's just every episode we don't necessarily want to share with the general public, if you know what I'm saying. Again, that's rarecandy.substack.com. We also have merch. That link's a little long for me to say right now, but go to the description, go to our merch store, and find a shirt that's right for you. We have Rare Candy shirts, Dr. Bronner soap label shirts, Rishi mushroom shirts, all types of stuff there. Check it out. There's got to be something for you. And lastly, check us out on social media. On Instagram, we're Rare Candy Pod, but on Twitter, we're at Rare Candy Pod 1. All right, enough of that. Let's get you back into the episode. And but yeah, Sai, I want to hear about your experience with it because I've never heard you really talk about them other than when I bring them up.
Yeah, I was looking back, I was thinking back on this, and it was, for me, it was interesting. I have a little story that'll set this tone, maybe just about my personal life with this, where
you had sex with Brian Ferry.
Yes, yeah, he deflowered me.
Yeah.
No, like when and you, Glenn, you know this story of me when I first went to college when I was 18. Mm-hmm. And then that first year, I just didn't fit in. Everything was just so like painfully normy to me. It was a time when I was doing like mushrooms, and I was like, there's got to be something else going here.
More than this,
exactly. And and then I was just like, and then it was coming up on a time where you had to choose where you're going to live the next year, and it was just all these like Target ass style dorms and stuff, and I were just like off campus. I was like, man, I was just so depressed on the prospect. And then finally there was this one spot where all the weird kids went, and all the normal kids were like scared of it, you know. But there was this one spot where like all the weird, like it was like the theater kids and the art, like art ho type place, you know, and everything. So I was like, you know, I'm just gonna let it roll on this. Like, what do I have to lose, you know? And so I went there, and it was a Roxy Music ass type place. It was literally like a castle, you know. And I think, you know, like Rocky Horror, you know, picture show kind of vibe and everything. So I think I first heard from some of the kids in there, some of my friends, and it was just, you know, I was like, you know, we were joking earlier about like scaring the hose. You know, this is scaring the art. Roxy Music scaring the art hose, but not scaring in the good way. Yeah, and so yeah, exactly. So I think like right around then is when I was like, okay, this is different. This is unique. And then same thing. It didn't really take me. I respected it, but I was like, okay, this is cool. And then, I had the 80s binge later on when I really got into 80s stuff. And then Avalon, of course. And then going back to the beginning stuff and be like, oh, this is actually really incredible. And so I think, maybe we all had a similar thing where we looped back onto it, you know, kind of. And it's one of those bands, because you hear people talk about them with such respect, and then you listen and you're like, oh, it's all right. And then you listen again, you're like, oh shit, there it is. Yeah. So that was my long-winded.
And you got to see it too. There's a visualization. Once if you listen to it, it's good. And then you see Brian Ferry's kind of like, I'll be honest, like dorkiness, like his dorkiness and swagged out alpha kind of yin and yang thing that he has, that he toggles back and forth between. You're like, oh, I get it now. Because their music is nerdy and like also is some of the coolest, like, sexual music you'll ever hear. It's kind of extinct now. There's that dynamic doesn't really happen. I mean, if somebody wants to point me in the direction of where it's happening, I'd love to. It's kind of like nerds don't make that type of music anymore. And I don't even, and the thing is, I don't even think Brian Ferry's much of a nerd. He's actually a working class guy. coming from just some farm boy yard. His parents, I think his dad was
Dad was a coal miner.
It was a coal miner. His dad had to go work in the mines because he had a farm that failed during like a kind of a
Like
droughtish.
Zoolander.
Yeah, it was Zoolander.
It is a Zoolander story.
Yeah, it's John Voight and Vince
Merman,
Vaughn.
dude.
Yeah,
Exactly.
And
Kind of the same hair, you know.
Yeah,
exactly.
But it was because you think it's this guy who like grew up in a castle and decided to do art school and like just didn't want to sit on the family fortune and wanted to make music instead. But it's really not like that. And Ferry auditioned for King Crimson, which I think is kind of funny. Like he kind of could have been like a singer for King Crimson for a while, which would have worked. But I mean, I'm kind of glad it didn't because we probably don't get this if that happens. But you know, right off the bat, we got to talk about the album covers because right off the bat they hit you with the sexual glamour shot of the self-titled Roxy album. Now, aesthetically, Vincent, as somebody who is I would guess visually stimulated, tell me about these album covers starting from this one right here. I mean, what like they're part of it all is the album cover. It's part of the whole experience.
Yeah, I mean, I buy the vinyls. You can't see them behind me, but I have Brian back there. But anyway, I get them because of the art.
Yes,
you can't actually play them, but I like to stare at them, and they're just these perfect pop art images, and that's all from Ferry's training as an artist. I mean, he was an art school kid, and he was a painter while he was becoming a musician. And there's always been that dichotomy, and he's himself has stated, I want to be judged as an artist. Above and beyond being a musician, I want to be judged as an artist. So there's always been that attention to the visuals, to the presentation, how to stand out and make something different. And Roxy from, the jump came out with something that was completely different than anyone had seen in rock and roll. And especially at that time, the very start of the 70s, everyone's wearing, denim and has long hair.
Yeah.
And they're trying to be Bob Dylan or coming out of the hippie era.
Oh, that's such a good point because I remember I believe on the first two Roxy albums, if not after that, they were crediting their costume designer on the albums.
Yeah.
And like they were very much this. I mean, people probably had all sorts of stuff to say about it. Kind of like, what's this guy's problem? What are these guys doing? Brian Eno, scary looking back then. I mean, it's not the Brian Eno that you see nowadays, not like the kind of like dirtbag left Brian Eno that you see now. He was very scary looking, very autogynephilic, like very
he looks like the assistant in Rocky Horror Picture Show.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That was my first thought when I first saw pictures of him in early Roxy. I'm like, oh my God, who is this man?
People are obsessed with Brian Eno, and I like him. I like him a lot, actually. It's not even to say that, but it kind of feels like there's certain people that only tune in for things that he's involved in, and then he gets out.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we're gonna, of course, go through the whole Roxy catalog, but I find it kind of funny, and I find out that it worked out so perfectly. The way this happened is, Eno leaves, I think, before the Siren album. Is that
he left after the second album?
Oh, the second album. So even before that, that's right. So he left after that. He has his 70s run, but he's also then goes to Berlin with Bowie and makes some of my favorite music of all time, while Roxy's making some of my favorite music of all time. And it all works out, it all works out. That's what I love.
Well, their dynamic was the reason that they broke up is you can't have two frontmen in a rock band. Yeah. And that's what was happening. And, Brian Eno is a great talker and a pretty charismatic and outgoing guy, and Brian Ferry is not. And if you've ever seen interviews with him, you'll catch that like right away.
Yeah, Brian Ferry's funny though. Brian Ferry does find a way to be charmingly antisocial, though, I will say, which he has that BBC interview that's about a few years after Avalon, where he hasn't really shown his face in a while. And he has a solo album coming out. I think it's the Slave to Love one. That's that
garden.
Yeah, sitting in a garden. It's beautiful, and it's actually a really well done interview. I think he actually looks like he wants to be there, and it's kind of fun. And I love the idea that it's the classic British guy thing. You make your biggest album and then you just escape to a castle in the countryside for like 5 years and don't talk to anybody. But yeah, Eno was always, I'm not a musician, man. I'm not a musician. And I remember Brian Ferry in that interview says, he goes, well, I always looked at myself as more of an artist and a musician, and you can't have a band with 2 non-musicians.
Yeah.
I was like,
That
that's kind of
defines
it.
them.
It's
Yeah.
kind of an interesting way to put it. And
Yeah.
you know,
And that's so funny to me, just especially listening to this again, because they are really quite the sophisticated musical group. It really is interesting how they're, I mean, just rhythmically, and they're so weird because he tries to sing different on every song or every album. Obviously Brian Eno's doing his thing, and especially rhythmically, it's really, especially for like British rock, it's really complex stuff, but it also just stays right there in the middle and doesn't try and be anything it's not, doesn't waver. Brian Eno is interesting. My whole take, especially re-listening, I always like, my whole take with Brian Eno is he's gay, but he's kind of cool. You know, it's like that's like sums it up with him.
And which is he made all the noises that I hate on the PC, which is like, that's gay, but it's kind of cool. Thanks for letting me know.
Exactly.
Yeah. That's the way I look at it.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, the
And
first album.
Well, it's just like, because I remember reading that article where he came up with all those Windows sounds. And then I'm like, let me look up this dude's net worth. And you're like, Jesus Christ, dude. It's like, it's like, God Lord. Yeah. Because I remember he was getting all mad at everyone for doing NFT music. And he's like, it's a money-making scheme. And I'm like, let me check the dude's net worth. They're like, dude, it's like 9 figures. It's like, holy fucking shit, dude. It's crazy.
Producing for U2 and every other big act in the 80s will help with that.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
And now this first Roxy album, which is Roxy Music, the self-titled, where you get the kind of like glamour shot, like department store, but like sexual department store glamour shot, like look of this woman.
Cheesecake pinups.
Yeah, the pinup shot, kind of like something you would see, like an updated version of something. There's a very Eno likes to call back to like that World War II 30s 40s era, but like an updated version of it. This is like something that would be in a soldier, like passed around like a boat that dudes would jerk off to, and but in the 70s, and updated with the times, like a lot heavier makeup and all that stuff on this woman. And the it's a good album though. I like it. It takes a couple listens though. I think if you're a person that came from like Avalon, maybe some of Siren, maybe some of Flesh and Blood, there's a tougher path into this album. And I think the path in is Brian Ferry. Brian Ferry is the tethering to a normal pop sound that I think saved them from really being into the obscure ghetto of the avant-garde a lot of times, which, you know, people, there's really not a lot of pride I think people can take in that, even though people like the people love the like such inaccessible music as a signifier, but like, to be honest, nobody ever actually enjoys making it 10 years after. They're always like, why didn't I just make something cooler, you know? And I feel like Ferry is this just kind of classic rocker guy, but he has this James Bond element to him.
It's his references. He grew up listening to jazz and the big band music out of America, and that's always been his love. And obviously, you know, when we talk about his later solo interpretive albums where he's just singing other people's songs, you know, he just loves that kind of popular 50s, 40s, 30s music that everyone can relate to. That first album is like the wackiest thing they ever did, and then they just progressively smoothed out the edges and became easier to listen to.
The crooner stuff, the old covers, that's something I didn't clue into when I first was into Roxy, and then you see it. Yeah, it really is. Because that's the best, because that's like what Lennon did. All those guys, where you could really tell it's their love of music.
He has a lot of Lennon.
Speaking of Lennon,
yeah, exactly.
One of their biggest songs is a cover.
Yeah.
Jealous Guy. Yeah, which is a phenomenal cover of us. To be honest, I'll say that as a Lennon stan, that's not my favorite Lennon song. But when you hear Roxy's version, I'm like, wow, this has like actually. I think I like the Lennon song more now because I like the Roxy song. It's like weird. Yeah. It makes you like the original one more. And it is one of their massive songs. You can hear, I think they do it at Live Aid, like, you know, like, and all that. And, but yeah, you start out the first Roxy song that you can ever hear if you go chronological on an album, I should say, remake, remodel. It's sick. It comes in right away. You're like, whoa. And it is weird. Like they teetered on like, weird all the time. They had that knob, like they were in the red a little bit sometimes, and you're like, okay, what are we doing here? Like all of a sudden you'll catch the groove, and then there will be this very strange, like William Burroughs Naked Lunch, like saxophone that comes in. You're like, why did that just come in right now? That this
The
is
yakety sax starts.
yeah, exactly. Like it's very like kind of like bad acid trip, like nothing in this room matches each other kind of ways. But Remake, Remodel, and Ladytron, I think, are two both very, very good songs. I could listen to those songs over and over again.
I love how the first, at least the first few albums, you'll get in one song, you'll almost get like 3 songs within a song.
Yeah.
The way that they'll just switch up, you know, a third of the way through and then 2/3 of the way through. I think of, what is it called? Medley. It's off, I believe it's off the first album. But just they're these insane experimental left turns in each of at least the first 2 albums, which are the weirdest and, you know, probably the least digestible, but really the most influential. Yeah, they're tough. If you're coming from Smoothie era Avalon and you go back and you expect to hear the same thing, that's not what you're going to get.
No,
at all.
No, you're not. And they the band members, particularly the guitarist Phil, would say that Ferry was not there yet as a songwriter, and I think he's correct. He's not quite where he gets I would say the mid 70s. Even I would say by Country Life, I would say, is when he really started becoming like, okay, this is a guy that could write smash records like whenever he wants. But at this time, he's doing the young guy kind of experimental, you know, borderline edgelord stuff. Even if it's not edgelordy content, it's just edgelord in structure, I think, kind of bucking trends. But like, again, there's this kind of like familiar Bowie Elvisness to him that is kind of like, okay, this still doesn't sound like something I could never listen to. But I implore everybody to go back and listen to it and just kind of put it on and go do something. Don't just sit down and listen to it, because you're gonna, if you force yourself to try to get into it, it's not going to work. But you'll find yourself walking around to it on a nice like day, and you'll go like, okay, I get it. This is really good. And they did have one big single from it. It was Virginia Plain, which is kind of the old school rocker song of the album. And it's good. It's quite good. And that they were a lot bigger in the UK originally too, is what I've noticed. It wasn't for a while that they didn't become this massive US hit. I would even say towards the end is when they started getting their real US run. And Ferry still to this day is a lot bigger in the UK than he is in.
They never really hit here.
I think Avalon would have been the closest. I mean, it would have been that was the closest to a smash. That Flesh and Blood had. I know, just talking to people who were around during that time. My parents like graduated high school around when like Flesh and Blood came out, so they were like, that was huge. But yeah, you didn't know that they had all that weird stuff before that. You had to have like been getting like the weird rock magazines, or like knowing a lot of, you had to be in the know to know about their early avant-garde stuff.
Yeah, I mean, you read even just reading about like what the press was saying at the time, and the band, you know, Roxy, and what the guys in it were saying at the time. Like, their first US tour was a bomb. They hated it. None of them were really happy to be there. They didn't feel they were getting enough promotion, because the American listener didn't really know where to slot them. They're like, this is not Led Zeppelin. This is not giving us the da-da-dun. This is not giving us the sound that we want. This is not soul music. So it's not David Bowie giving us, you know, Young Americans or anything like that. There was no easy in for sort of the casual listener, really. You kind of had to be a weirdo to get into those first batches of songs, you know.
For sure. Yeah, I think you're right. And like people had said, they're not the first people to be like this androgynous group, but they're the first people to make androgynous sounding music. I feel like you hear it and it's like, yeah, you know, like the music itself, you're like, I don't know what's going on in the music, because the Stones, right? The Stones had that look about them at that time, but the Stones music was rock and roll. It was rock and roll that, you know, took off in the US, took off in Britain. Beatles, you know, they had the Beatles had that clean cut corporate look to them for up until the mid 60s. So there were all these ways in, like you said, with these other bands. But Roxy was like, it took them a while, man. It took them a while. And I don't think any of them thought that this was going to ever be. I think they thought this was an experiment, you know, this band. I don't know. I know you've said you've read some of the book and stuff. Do they talk about how the longevity of this band, or was it kind of just a let's see what happens kind of thing?
Oh, it was, you know, if you read about sort of the formation of the group, they were all just like, Brian Ferry was like teaching art. They were all kind of doing other jobs. They were all kind of old for rock stars at the time.
Mm-hmm.
They were all in their late 20s. And
old as hell.
yeah, for,
Gosh.
you know,
Yeah,
considering,
I know. It sucks, man. When you hear about these things, you're like,
well,
oh
Jesus
man,
Christ, man.
I know that's old. I'm washed.
But
Yeah.
they thought, you know, it was this thing they were doing, and they found success pretty quickly though, because Ferry would, you know, like talk to journalists. He like assiduously courted rock music press,
Uh-huh.
and that also caught the ire of certain people in the industry, because you weren't really supposed to do that. You were just supposed to gig for 10 years, you know, and pay your dues and go to clubs and do this, that, and the third. And they never really did that. They just sort of leapfrogged from being this fully formed thing into, you know, Virginia Plain and Roxy Music and being this sensation in the UK. So they skipped a few steps, and that pissed people off, but they were so undeniably interesting and original in terms of the sound and the presentation, because they're one of the first glam acts, you know, that we would recognize as being glam rockers. That was pretty new.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And it was, you know, people didn't know what to do with that. It was,
No,
you know, you had
not at all.
nobody knew what to do with that. I mean, even Bowie had his struggles at first. Like he didn't
Oh, yeah.
he didn't come out making hits. Like he came out,
The Laughing Gnome, you know.
he had to change his name because the guy in the Monkees, you know, had the
Right.
David Jones. Like it's
Yeah.
there's a lot of these guys, you know, that we know now as just like titans. It's like it was tough to do, and that's why to anybody who's creating something, but you know it's the right thing to do, just keep going, man. Like the public perception is, it sucks, dude. Public perception, people do not do their due diligence as listeners as they should, and just keep going. People will find you, because I swear, like, you know, if that first Roxy album, they could all just be like, man, are we doing the right? Is this right? But to their credit, they found a way to never lose the reason you like them, and to kind of accent. I think they kind of became more minimalist as they kept going, and they realized certain things they wanted to highlight. One thing about this group is the bass is always some of the best bass you'll ever hear in any music. It's not done by one guy though. There's like 3 or 4 different bassists in this band. However, it's
a bunch of people. There was a
but it sounds like a constant. The element of it is a constant, which is quite funny. You would think that would be one guy, and it's not. Whereas the guitar, they're very guitar forward at the beginning. Phil Manzanera, he has some of the, I mean, some really underrated solos, I think. And later the guitar becomes, as music progressed in the 70s and 80s, the guitar became more of a garnish to a lot of the stuff. A very good garnish. So there are a lot of people that I still don't know how much I believe them, but there's a lot of people that say they prefer these first 2 Roxy albums. Again, I think we have Brian Eno stands when I hear this. I think
that was the problem.
Yeah,
it was the problem.
People would show up to the shows, and they would show up for one Brian or the other Brian, and that was another reason that Ferry got pissy and said, "This guy's got to go."
Yeah,
these are my lyrics. This is my baby. We can't be doing this.
Yeah, Brian Eno, he was crucial to making them pop in those first 2 records, but I am kind of glad he got out of there.
Oh,
yeah, it is. Yeah,
this goes haywire if he stays in the group. Like this turns into like, they're like, what if he just shows up with like stones to the? Like, what are we gonna do with those?
Yeah,
don't worry. You know, like I feel like we'd get into real big time, like,
oh yeah,
like a scary version of like Pure Moods is what would end up happening after a while with like Roxy, and it like a bad version, I think. And I think they kind of wither away and disappear and kind of have this like cult, almost contrarian fan base, rather than the one that they have now. But I do like the For Your Pleasure album. I think that's when they really started to I thought of this because I've been listening to them a lot lately. Shout out to Yerk, but Can. There's a lot of similarities to Can on this album, I think, and it's highlighted that the Bogus Man kind of did draw a lot of comparisons to some krautrock and Can. Judi Dench is featured on here. They did bring in a lot of like it girls at the time. They were always a band that had plenty of women around. And Judi Dench is saying in the For Your Pleasure, the final song, voice. She says, you don't ask why. She says that in there, which is kind of cool. Judi Dench, which everyone knows from like the James Bond movies and stuff, but at the time she was kind of a, you know, kind of her own like in her younger 70s days in
Yeah.
that.
I
Pretty
didn't
cool.
know that was her voice. That's so
Yeah,
funny.
yeah. This is all. I mean, look, this is I'm actually just going through the stuff I don't know about this album on Wikipedia, and I was like, wow, there's a
Okay.
lot I don't know about this album. But you know, the artwork, right? The artwork with it. Brian Ferry's girlfriend at the time, Amanda Lear, was the kind of the featured girl on the front of it, and it was by Carl Stalker, who was I guess he was kind of like a close friend of Salvador Dali, but I really like the album cover a lot on this one. Kind of has like a little Catwoman, like Batman style thing going on. And it's there's always an element of somber and kind of scary to a lot of Roxy stuff. Even some of their glamorous stuff, there's like this kind of yearning, crooning quality to it that makes you feel a little bit sad.
A hint of darkness.
It is a hint of darkness, and you can see on the album cover, you see that weird little creature. You know, just that, like, what is it, like a panther or something? I don't know what the hell that is. Like, it's just this weird little thing on the front, and that on this otherwise glamorous skyline with Brian Ferry's quite attractive girlfriend at the time, which he would Brian Ferry kept a model at all times. That's one thing you need to know.
Got to remake and remodel every 4 years.
Yes, that's literally. And on this album, one of the biggest songs that are on there is, of course, Do the Strand. That's kind of a fun intro album. A lot of their track ones. Roxy's a great track one band. They really set the tone on track one. But then popularized, or I should say repopularized, by David Fincher in the show, which I really quite enjoyed, Mindhunter. That was a casualty of COVID, of course. Took that show out, and they decided to put more Netflix slop out that was easier to make and less good, of course. And but in Every Dream Home, A Heartache, there was kind of the opening scene of Mindhunter where there was this weird, freaky serial killer getting caught by his wife in the house. And of course, that song, you know, it can sound like a weird, freaky serial killer song, but it's really more of a satire of living with a bunch of plastic fake things all around you. And one of them just being a blow up doll, essentially, having my blow up doll. But then, you know, when you kind of, anytime I hear that song, I expect the famous drop to be earlier. I'm like, man, this goes on for a really, really long time. This kind of like Leonard Cohen-y like style sonnet that he's doing in there. But then all of a sudden, when you get the Phil Manzanera guitar solo, unbelievable. I mean, I can listen to that anytime. I can listen to that song anytime. That drop, it rips, dude.
They didn't know what Ferry's lyrics were going to be. He had them create the music for it.
Yes. Yeah.
And then he sang the song, and I'm like, what? That's what you want this crazy guitar solo for? Is for the drop that we're revealing it's about a blow up doll? This is great.
Yeah, because the song is just organ, right? It's just organ. It's kind of this like kind of almost iron butterfly organ happening in the background, and it's going forever. And Ferry has this. He's really detached. Sounds sinister and weird in it. Different than a lot of his later work, of course, where he sounds really the opposite. But yeah. Oh my gosh, I could listen to that song any time of day, and yeah, it's used in a lot of stuff. I think it's used in like a bunch of movies now because it's got that kind of cinematic quality to it. It's very descriptive, and
from the 5 to the 6, we be in the mix with that red candy paint job on the whip. I need food for the kids, money for the rent. Fuck a lockdown, baby, can't do shit.
I never hear him talk about this a lot, but a lot of Roxy from this point on really has a lot like a Bret Easton Ellis quality to me that I really, really like, especially as you get old, especially as you get later in the catalog. I don't hear him speak about them ever too much, except for in the Shards. I believe it's mentioned once or twice, just being on because Avalon was big in 1982. But
Shards is a Roxy music ass book too.
I mean, for me, like, the main thing on Avalon is just like Less Than Zero. I just picture like Clay from Less Than Zero driving around.
Driving around. Yeah, that's a
Yeah.
great scene. That's a good music video for that.
Yeah.
That's literally it's vaporwave clay, basically, like from from Less Than Zero. Like you could do that all day. Now I know there's people that do in every dream home a heartache. They do like The Shining, like Jack Torrance, like and Wendy and stuff. Like there's a lot of these fun edits that people do with it. You know, it is what it is. But I think this is the first album where I think they had a lot of moving parts in the self-titled album, and I think they kind of focused on what they wanted to do, and it sounds, I think it's more effective, but it's kind of the same sound.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you know, Ferry's creative control continued to just get tighter and tighter as each album went on. And it's funny, like reading about the press reception to those albums.
Mm-hmm.
And the critics, at least from what I understand, they loved the first two. And then being the hipster ass, you know, jerks that they were, they continued to like say, this is good, but this is beginning to sound so polished. You're losing all of this energy and this crazy experimentation you had from, you know, the first two albums. What are you doing? What are you doing?
Which sucks.
Sales kept going up though, so it seemed to, you know, didn't really
exactly, because what sucks is if I stayed as that weird pet project for a journalist, like this weird, oh, I like that, that's my weird band, you know, if you stayed that way, it's like, yeah, but nobody buys this shit, all right, like people don't buy this.
Exactly.
And I'm trying to do this forever, and I want to progress. And one thing I like about Ferry is he wasn't shy about wanting to make hit records. You hear these artists now, they always pretend like making a hit is like not that big of a deal. I mean, because it isn't, because of Spotify and all these things. But all these people kind of like incidentally, like, I'm just trying to do my own thing and all that stuff. But like you would hear people like, I'm competing with Mick Jagger. I'm competing with these people. I want to be better than that. Like it was kind of, there was a sports element to it that I really gravitate to, where they were like, they cared how the album sold, like, because you know why? Because people would
made
walk
the money.
around, yeah, and people would sit down with these albums and actually listen to them for like months on end, rather than when's your next single? It's like, no, sit with my album, come see me live. Which Roxy is fantastic live, by the way. If I didn't, obviously never had a chance to see them, but if you go through on YouTube, there's some really good live stuff where it's not just a carbon copy of the recording, though they don't stray super far from it. And I really like that. They find that clever balance in there. But Stranded is next up here. And Stranded is this one, to me, maybe I'm wrong here. This might be my least favorite Roxy album.
Really?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, the cover's cool. I just think I think it's another one where it sounds like the first album of a 3-album run where they had a similar sound, and I think the other two are better. And that's just me. I think there's a little more. It's more glam rock. It's more like traditional rock and stuff. The album is great. It's a Playboy model on the front, Marilyn Cole. Definitely like Rainforest Cafe, sexual Rainforest Cafe happening on the album. Love it. And like a rain stick in the background. Very cool. But yeah, Street Life's great. I like Amazon. I like the hits on it. Even Psalm is good, but I was listening to it today and I just couldn't wait to get to the next one. I want to hear if you guys are into this album. I want to hear about it though.
Yeah, Amazona's probably one of my favorite. I do kind of agree with you. I'm not rushing to throw this record on, but I do love that song. I think it's really great.
Do you like the timing switches in Amazon? I noticed that in there.
For sure. I was tripping out on that this week. Yeah, this week.
Yeah, they go from 14-4 and then 4 bars of 3-4 and then 1 of 2-4.
Yeah.
Kind of crazy.
And it's like, yeah, exactly. And it, timing change, this is rare candy. Like timing changes, obsessing over that is Reddit.
It is.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
So when a band pulls it off sounding good, where like effortless, that's the secret to that stuff. Where you're not like shoving it in the listener's face. Here, listen to my key change. Right. Listen to my,
Not the selling point of the band.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think you nailed it.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It's like cussing, dude. Like it's like cursing, right? If cursing becomes the thing that's supposed to make me laugh, I'm not going to laugh. However, a well-placed curse word is great,
Exactly.
And it's the and you hear people now, fucking this. It's like they have otherwise really you know, boring, banal take on something, but they put fucking in it, so you're supposed to
Yeah.
like it, and it's kind of like otherwise a bad song, but it's like, oh, but the timing changed, and there's this person that just likes to signal that they know more about music than you. Like, okay, well, I don't like the song, sorry, you know, like it's not a big deal. But Vincent, you're a big fan of this album.
You know, I like Mother of Pearl. It's
That's a good
not.
one.
Yeah, I mean, you know, that's my favorite song out of that particular album.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good one. Yeah.
I don't know. I love. There's a few different music videos of that, or at least of him performing it. I don't know if there's an official video for it.
Yeah, that was the big thing around the time, is people were doing kind of these like things to play at art galleries and stuff, and like Bowie would do that a lot in the 70s. They weren't like, they were what we would know later as music videos, but there was no MTV. So, you know,
they're like playing on Top of the Pops, or you know,
Right.
some other television show. And I don't know, there's a mood to that, and a sense of what's happening to Ferry and the band. They have money in their pockets, you know.
Oh,
They're caught up in the glitz and the high life, and you know, I've been up all night, party time, wasting too much fun. And he's searching for his Mother of Pearl. You know, it's all a sham, it's all a dream. You know, it's all through the looking glass, and the substance and the something real that he's looking for is just always out of reach. You know?
And I will say, just like you, I really like a lot too. I think that's I think that's, to me, it's like a kind of a solo John Lennon song without being one a little bit. It's quite nice. To be honest, I don't even know if it fits on the album. It actually sounds like it's weird. It kind of takes you for the rest of the album, has this kind of like pedal to the metal kind of fun rock element to it, and then you have Just Like You, which I just think on its own, as an isolated song, I think is quite nice on there. But again, the album cover of Stranded, you know, it's like I said, it's sexual, right? It's sexual. They didn't tone it down for the next one. The next one, Country Life, is just pure pornography.
It's my favorite album cover.
Oh my god! I remember in college when I worked at the radio station, people used to have this shirt. It was this was back before like sex was outlawed in like 2016, when you couldn't just show women looking hot on
do it anymore.
Yeah, well, I mean, you can. You're just gonna be like Terry Richardson, you know, like kind of getting shit on and stuff like constantly, and everyone's going to talk about you as though you are a violent rapist or something. And
I mean, they did catch flack for these covers.
Yeah, sure. No, I mean, to be honest, it's weird. They caught different kind of flack. So it's like the nudity itself, they're like, you can't put nude girls on album covers. That's bad. Like that was just the issue people had with it. And nowadays it's like, you can't do that because what you're actually doing is and assaulting me and all.
There was no hemming and hawing. It was just like, we sir, there are children here. We can't put this in the record shop, you know?
Exactly. It was more so just like it was arguing the actual thing rather than what the thing represents. It was just I feel like that was the way. But I love Country Life. I think this is.
It opens up with probably the best of
Throw
their album.
Throw of It All goes crazy. I love 3 and 9 too. I love 3 and 9. I think that's
3 and 9.
Oh, side one, especially of this album, is like pretty tough to find a flaw in. And Thrill of It All. I mean,
All I Want Is You. I have a book of lyrics, so I'm just flipping through that as we're talking. I'm like, these are all amazing.
Yeah, this is a really, really good album. And I feel like they kind of hit that intersection of like art, rock, and just rock. And this is where they hit that intersection and everything. Yeah, the sweet spot, that the 432 hertz, you know, just kind of like, man, this is working. And yes, Lord. I mean, it's all of this whole album is good. The album cover is great. It, like I said, if you look at like a Terry Richardson photo now, it kind of reminds me of the 70s kind of like more glammed up version of that. And I don't know who these chicks are. I'm trying to like look, but like they gotta be somebody, right? I mean, you know, it's
that's another of my origin story for Roxy, where I kind of knew about them, but then I saw this album cover on a guy's shirt.
Yeah,
and
I remember the shirts.
And I was like, what's that? And I was like, I'll check them out again, you know. It's like, I'll take another listen.
Oh, it's actually the sister of a guy from Cannes actually is one of the chicks.
I think it's always some random band. It's always like some like X of like Cannes band or something. You know, I love that about that.
That's
Just
pretty
That
funny.
scene back then. Yeah.
Yeah,
The
for
first
sure.
Roxy girl, I think, married Mick Jagger's brother.
Damn.
Yeah,
Just
well, Mick Jagger comes into the Roxy story in a pretty dramatic way.
Well, I don't know about that, so I'm ready to
Whoa.
hear it. I'm ready to hear it. When does that happen? Does it just,
Well, with the next album, with Siren,
well,
and
this
Siren's cover girl, the lovely Jerry Hall.
yes.
Oh,
Of
yes.
course.
yes.
Jerry Hall. Yeah, of course. I didn't even realize that was Jerry Hall. See, this is the thing. I get so caught up in all this music, I forget like that there's all these like moving parts to it. But yes, Siren. I mean, you want to talk about a track one? You hear the clicking of the heels. It's just like that's so nice. Roxy has some of the best sound design of any band. I mean, and then of course their final album, Avalon, I think is the greatest mixed album in the history of albums. Like their sound is so on point. A lot of people credit that to like Eno, but it's going on well after he leaves.
Yeah, he's gone.
He's
only
gone.
the first two albums.
Maybe he showed people a couple things. However, it's still happening. And it's getting better and better and better. But it starts out with Love Is the Drug. There's that funny, like, I don't know if it's Top of the Pops performance where where Brian Ferry has a eye patch.
Yes, he's wearing an eye patch. He's got the G.I. Joe look. He's wearing, he looks like an off-duty soldier in World War II.
I know. This era of British rocker. You figure I always talk about this. I talked about this with Jack, with the Beatles and all that stuff. Like, you have to remember, like, a lot of these guys like saw like Europe got bombed out by World War II. So they're always calling back to that era all the time. You figure the Beatles, these guys are from like Liverpool and all these places, these like bombed out like working class towns, and like these buildings are like torn up. It's not, I mean, in America, we didn't get that, over here. No. We had our own struggles, but it wasn't like that. And you figure the British people are so love to call back to that time so much more, because it is like kind of the genesis of a lot of the rock that comes from there. Is like,
it's where all the music comes from. It's from soldiers from America bringing their records and playing their music in England, stationed there for the war. Yeah. And who hears that and who climbs onto that? It's the kids. Ferry was born in 45. Mm-hmm. So he's he missed the war, but that was the soundtrack to his childhood, was all the stuff that people brought over, 10 years earlier.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. But like I said, you hear the foot, you hear the heels clicking on the pavement. It's great. And then you just hear one of the most infectious bass lines you'll ever hear. Love Is the Drug. It's amazing. It's actually an Andy McKay song. Ferry wrote on it as well, but it's actually an Andy McKay song. And I remember hearing Andy McKay and doing an interview, kind of a inside baseball kind of like interview about making some of these songs, and he was talking about how Brian came in, and then I think Brian commented on it another time. He said that was written as a ballad, like a slow ballad, which I can't even picture.
Oh, that's so funny.
Yeah, it was kind of like supposed to be a kind of a croony little ballad. Love is the drug.
I can't even imagine that.
No, I can't. And then Brian Ferry was like, "Fuck this, dude. Let's make a little hit, man. Like, let's make a."
I want them to dance to this.
Yeah, I want to like hit a rail off a toilet seat, dude, in the bathroom. Like, I want to do I want to party. Like, this is 1975. Like, this is. Let's do it. And it's what a great executive decision by that. And it's the first track on the album. And the album just, I think this is a perfect album to me. I love it so much.
This might be my favorite non-Avalon.
Yeah, it's
record.
Yeah, because it's funny because Avalon is kind of objectively their best. I mean, it's just an objective, and it's the first one you'd tell somebody to listen to. It's kind of the one, if you were trying to sell me Roxy music in 5 minutes, like you would
Avalon.
Yeah, you would put that on. But like everybody has their like, yeah, but actually, this one is the one I would go. This is up there. Mine hasn't come yet. My other one, but this is so good. I love She Sells. I can never still can't get that one right. But and Both Ends Burning. I mean, gosh, Both Ends Burning is so good.
What a great closer. Holy cow.
And he performed it. He performed it a lot too on his solo stuff. You could tell he loves that song. Both Ends Burning. Brian Ferry. He would take that in the 80s, like deep into the 80s, would be performing that song, which there's no reason to, right? Like that's not like it was a single, but they had much bigger hits than that. I love when artists like hang on to a few old songs to bring back. When like I saw Peter Gabriel, and I talk about this all the time, he was just like he couldn't wait to get through the stuff that we paid to see him for. You know,
must have been so disappointing.
Look, it's fun to laugh at. It's fun to laugh at because I'm a huge PG guy. Like I love Peter Gabriel. A lot of his, I mean, he could have brought back some deep cuts from back in the day, like, and I would have been okay. But it's like, dude, you don't even play Shock the Monkey. How do you not play Shock the Monkey? And you're around all these people, and they're looking around, and you can tell they're like into it because he's saying all these like social justice things, so they don't want to like hate on that. This is San Francisco, so like they don't want to hate on that, and it's all these like Gen X and like boomer people in masks, and they're just like, oh, that's cool. They're like, oh, I love this like tribal 2007 Peter Gabriel like tribal, you know, song from the sub-Saharan region. Like, oh, so good. Like, man, this is what I wanted to hear, you know. And but you would hear with Roxy, they would do a Roxy and Brian Ferry, he would still mix in some of the old school stuff. He was, I think he cared about entertaining you, which I think that's missing from a lot of artists. Not even just now. I just mean in general. There's a lot of artists like, you know, Radiohead. Oh, we won't play Creep. Come on, dude, play Creep. Like what's that?
Please the crowd.
Yeah. People like, dude, I have this problem with athletes all the time. They're like, I'm not here to entertain you. It's like, really? I spent money I didn't have to come here. So, you know what I mean? Like, can I be part of it? Can I at least be part of it? The song that I love, the song that I at one point you loved, you know, as an artist. Like, can I hear it? And that's what I love about when you look up 1982, you'll see him performing Both Ends Burning. You know, 7 years after it came out.
That's another RC take that with the boomer musicians got to stop the lectures, like you with Peter Gabriel, and then I saw Peter Frampton, and he's talking for 45 minutes like a Kanye West rant, and it's like at some point, and then Brian Ferry is always like, I just want to be remembered as an artist, but he wasn't just saying that, which is cool because that could be seen as like some try hard, like, oh, I'm just an artist, you know, but he was about that life, you know. He was. I love that.
He's 100% serious.
Yeah. He's 100% serious. Yeah. And I feel like a comp to like Miles Davis, who was had big ego and everything and all that, but always played for the band, always put the band first, always just cared about the music. You know what I mean? You can say a lot about it, but at the end of the day, that was the product.
And then you have like a clever middle ground, which this still pisses people off. If somebody like Sting will be like, oh, I'll play the old song. However, I'm going to come in with a washboard. My Uber driver is going to play drums, and like, you know, all of this shit's going to happen. And like, it's going to, no, we're going to play Wrapped Around Your Finger. Don't get me wrong. Like, we're going to play that, but it's not going to, you know, and again, that's kind of annoying too, but at least it's somebody that knows that they know what you want to hear. And it's like, there's this supply and demand element to music that I think people are scared. You know, you'll hear like pop stars now, they'll have like stands and stuff, and they'll say, they don't owe you anything. It's like, no, they actually do. They actually, as a listener, they do. And their music can flop, and then I don't owe them any. I don't have to buy that song. I don't have to like listen to this song. Like, it has to be, you know, if I'm hearing a band and they're not playing what I like and what everybody likes, you know, like what you got to at least play like 3 or 4 things. And you know, there's a ground, because I get it from an artist. You might get bored of that song. You might get bored of it. But I guess what? I get bored of my job every day too. But I got to go do it. So it's just, I don't know. It's tough. It's a tough thing. But I've always respected Brian Ferry for just like, he'll introduce, and to be fair, he has really good solo records. So at least you would be getting good music from him if he decided to play only contemporary stuff. But again, going back to like Both Ends Burning, you know, 3 and 9, like he would play these songs live, and throughout his career, I would. The guy just turned 79 the other day. I guarantee you, he's going to perform. He's probably still performing, right?
He's still touring. I don't know quite the same capacity or clip that he was, but I mean, up until a few years ago, 2015, 16, I know he was in America again on a tour. People love to see him play. He doesn't sound the same way anymore.
No.
Well, who does? It, you know,
it's
70
tough.
Years old.
It's tough. Like, you know, like when my wife saw like Elton John, she's like, the background singers have to hit the high stuff for him. You know, it just is what it is. You know what you do. Like, I was driving by, I was going to Reno, and the Hard Rock Cafe in Sacramento, Diana Ross was playing. I'm like,
holy
what?
Cow.
What? I was like, is she hard up? Because I'm like, that I didn't even. To be honest,
she Frankie Valli hard up like you shared today.
That was what I was going to get to. That is the Frankie Valli thing. It's so sad. because he clearly owes somebody something. There's no way. He looks, first off, he's doing full Biden out there. He's full Biden. He's just like on stage, and there's all these like, Jersey people that are like fine, like Jersey boys people, they'll love him no matter what. But it's got Frankie Valli, I don't know how old he is. He's got to be like his late 80s, and it's just watching that happen. When it's clearly elder abuse or like they're hard up for money or something, it's really sad. Like it's just really sad. But Ferry looks like he just loves it. I'm sure he has plenty of money. I can't imagine he I mean, I know he had a lot of kids and marriages that didn't quite work, but I still feel like he's doing it for the love.
He's probably pretty comfortable.
I would think so.
I think the royalties were still hitting in the 90s to a degree they just don't today. So
one of the best and he's still, I know one thing he's still got the swag enough because he took his son's ex-girlfriend, dude. There was that thing where his son, can you imagine, dude, losing that's it's a thing. So I guess it was either his son's ex-wife or ex-girlfriend. It was just like,
I have to read about this.
Yeah, this was like one of the things it just popped up at a random like tabloid thing, and his son he has a bunch of sons. I think he has like mostly sons, and one of them is
3 sons, I think.
3 or 4. I think he had 4 with that one model girl. He had 4 with her, and I thought he had one other kid. I don't know, but anyways, one of the kids, he for whatever reason isn't with this woman anymore, and she ends up with Brian Ferry, which you figure that's probably why the girl was with the son in the first place, was to kind of either have a way in on the fortune or not, or I mean, who could resist Brian Ferry? And it's very feudal. It's very feudal times. Like punishing your son for not being a proper lord. And I don't think he's punishing him, but it's just like, hey, dude, don't leave her around me, dude. I'm your dad, man. Like, and as the kid, you wonder too. Like, you're just like, you see that maybe she's moved on. You're keeping tabs on her on social media, and you're just like, she have with my fucking dad right now, dude. Like that's gonna be rough. You see it. It's hilarious, dude. It's hilarious. He's still got it, man. I mean, it just, it's just that meme of was it the guy who, did this? And it's like, was it my dad? Yes, it was. You just see him like superimposed under a disco ball doing like quirky little moves and stuff. And how could
I love his dancing.
The dancing is such a part of it.
Oh, it's so good.
It's such a part of it. It's he moves in like this really odd rhythm that like maybe isn't quite what the song is, but for some reason it works like even better than if you were to actually dance to it like on point and on rhythm and stuff. But he's just got it, man. He's got the crooner thing just completely down, like the almost like lounge act kind of thing that he's doing to these songs. Now Grail Marcus, who's a major critic, music critic, he has Siren. That's one of his favorite albums, and he had an interesting write-up on it, and he says the band hitting the limits of the music that grew from Rubber Soul, which it's not where I would have put it, but why not? I mean, I do hear the Beatles are one of those things where you can't really write a good song without it sounding kind of like the Beatles. Like it's kind of, they kind of are patient zero for a lot of these, modern music. But he said Ferry dismantled his lounge lizard act bit by bit, which I don't actually agree that that's what he did. Until all that was left was what his entire career had meant to hide: an average man. But I think he sounds jealous.
Whoa, wait a minute.
I think he sounds jealous, dude. That's because I don't think the thing is, man, it's kind of like David Bowie. David Bowie and Brian Ferry, there's cool pictures of them together. They were clearly cool with each other.
They respected each other. Bowie took Roxy music. I don't know if they went on tour, but they definitely, Roxy opened for Bowie.
Oh, God, can you imagine how sick that would be? But the thing is, like, when Bowie, they're like, oh, and the Ziggy Stardust character took this, and the Thin White Duke character did it. I'm like, it's David Bowie. The music is different. He's the same. Like they don't sing that different. Like in all these songs, Ferry will take different routes in songs and kind of go to different registers. I think he's a little more versable, but I don't think his act never changed to me. I don't know. No. He's been the same guy. And they ask all the guys in the band, and they're like, so is Brian doing a character? And they're like, no.
He's always been this man.
Dude, that's just what he is. Like he's probably a little more shy in real life, but this is as though nobody's watching. He's doing dance like nobody's watching, right? That's kind of what he's doing. So I think it's funny to like cite that as like a favorite album of yours, and then just talk about how Brian Ferry's like kind of decides he's actually a loser, and that's why it's good. I'm like,
what a low blow.
Yeah, that was a hater. That was a hater. I think you might have lost a girl to Brian Ferry. That's some. I don't know.
Probably what happened. I wouldn't be surprised.
Man, that's I know that tone, man. That tone is like big braining a way to find out why somebody's cooler than you. You know, I know that tone. Yeah, they got credit for being, they got credit and hate simultaneously, which does happen when you make kind of a bit more of an accessible mainstream album like Siren is. You would hear people saying, well, they got rid of a lot of the esoteric parts of it. And then some people will go, that's why I like Roxy. But I don't know, man. Put this album on. Come on, like put this album on and decide if you like it or not. I can't imagine anybody really who's a Roxy fan really hates this album. Like that's a really tough contrarian position to have. But Jerry Hall is on the cover of this. So that, I mean,
lathered her in blue paint and made her pose on the rocks by the sea. She
looks like Madonna. She looks like Madonna a little bit in this. Like kind of a like, yeah. That's weird. She looks like a mythical version of like Madonna.
Like Madonna as Siren.
Yes, yeah. She looks like a Greek mythology Madonna on there. And did Mick Jagger get pissed about that or something? Because I feel like
Jerry Hall was Brian Ferry's girlfriend.
Okay.
So he swooped up, and they were together for a few years. And Brian Ferry's a workaholic, and that's basically been the demise of all of his relationships. I'm sure there's other things involved, but Jerry Hall was young and very beautiful and didn't really want to play housewife. And that's what he expected of her. And, you have Mick Jagger over to dinner a few times a week, repeatedly. Damn. People start playing footsie under the table. Brian goes away to record, write down lyrics. Things happen. They got access.
That's exactly what happened. Yeah, it's exactly what happened. Jerry Hall's dating history is hilarious. I mean, there's a lot of guys you go Mick Jagger, who they were together for a long time and stuff. But then Rupert Murdoch. Rupert Murdoch. It's insane. I mean,
that billionaire power.
Yeah, different kind of bag. That's a different kind of bag. But yeah, that's hilarious. Great. Just a great album. I mean, that's another one that I could, if you don't want to show someone Avalon for the first album, I would go Siren. I would guess it would be where I would go.
It's a pretty easy intro.
Yeah, exactly. And you got they released a live album, which is good. My mom had this on CD when I was a kid, which was pretty cool. I don't know where she got it, but because I never see it anywhere. But it's just a live kind of album that comes out. They are very good live though. Then they have their greatest hits album. They're on just a roll right now. They're on a roll, getting ready to make kind of their magnum opus. And then we get to Manifesto, which is kind of their foray into disco a little bit. And this is kind of funny because this is another one. I would not put it among their best, but it's still pretty damn good. I was listening to it today, and Dance Away, of course, is a classic. It's just a great hit. Angel Eyes is great. I like the opening track, Manifesto. Stronger Through the Years is good. These are good. These are good songs. It doesn't have the same kind of I wouldn't say it has the staying power that the other Roxy albums do, but if you're doing a binge, this will fit right in. But they brought in drum machines for this. This is where we start getting the Roxy, and inside, like your opinion on this is they started bringing in a lot of these drum machines. They're doing kind of these like little bossa nova like drum patterns on drum machines, which are kind of odd but fit. And disco is going crazy at the time when they're recording this album. It doesn't sound like they're trying to do, disco proper, but it definitely incorporating that element into it. And Brian Ferry was a big reason for that, because a lot of the band, they were like, we're too cool to do disco, basically, essentially. We're not doing that. They didn't really want to do a lot of the drum machine stuff, but then they fell in love with it, of course, because it sounded amazing, and they had hit records from it, and stuff that could play and people would dance to. And Contrary to what a lot of rock stars say, they like when people dance to their music and have fun.
Fun side effect of making them lots of money.
Exactly. It's really cool when a lot of people at once enjoy something in real time and dance to it. And it's actually really cool when that happens. And it's instead of like saying, oh, actually my B-sides, actually I take pride in my B-sides more than anything. Like I don't care what people think. And no, they love it. And but yeah, this is when when drum machines are really getting put in. You know, you have Marvin Gaye's got, you know, can't remember if it's after this or around the same time. You have Sexual Healing, Marvin Gaye.
It's a little after, yeah.
A little after, but
they
like
passed,
you know,
Roxy Music passed the disco test, which is you're able to dip your toes in without going full retard with it, you know. And it's I think like Funkadelic is another one that passed the test in a major way. You know, it's like, yeah, the drum machines are tasteful. It's I don't know, because I hate where, you know, you wake up from like a fever dream as an artist and you had your disco phase, and it's, you know, it's maybe it's cool, but it's kind of corny, and none of your fans will look back and be like, they missed on that, but they passed it, I think, for sure.
It's interesting because it's when you think about right now, you know, at the same time you have punk that's happening, and punk was like the anti-disco, anti-establishment, but we also saw the after effects of punk rock on a lot of people. And I think about at the time, somebody in like a Black Flag, or not Black Flag, you know, Sex Pistols, sure, let's say at the time, pissing on like anything disco, where disco was just kind of like a fun, decadent thing that I think everybody knew that wasn't going to stick around forever, but it was just kind of like a fun way to end a decade kind of thing. You have Studio 54 opening up and all of these things. And it was kind of just like there was a self-awareness of what disco was. Whereas like punk people thought like, this is the new sound. This is what we're doing for like the rest of our lives. And I don't know, I'll tell you right now, some of that disco stuff ages a lot better than a lot of that punk stuff, especially the people, you know, because the people now are the ones falling for the current things, whereas back then disco just was the current thing that was a lot of fun.
Yeah. You know, funny note on the punk thing. A lot of the punks were big Roxy fans when they were just coming up.
And they probably got pissed when this album
came out. They hated the disco stuff.
Yeah. I can imagine that. I can imagine there were people that checked out like after like Country Life, you know, and maybe Siren, okay, that was maybe the last one they might like. And then after that, I could see them just completely checking out, which, to be honest, I wouldn't even fault somebody for checking in at this point, because I think they get so sick at like they transcend so many things. They make these the next two albums, I think. I mean,
fantastic.
Dude, Flesh and Blood, the album cover is so sick, man. Like it is just so tight, man. And you know, women doing the javelins, and it's so cool. Flesh and Blood is just I think this is the first non-Avalon album that I like fell in love with and listened to over and over again.
Really?
I don't know. It's weird. I tell people this and they're like, oh, really? That's it might be my favorite besides Avalon. I come back to it all the time.
Oh, wow.
Same Old Scene. I love the drum machine at the beginning. I think it's it's so cool. Flesh and Blood's a great song. That's Brian Ferry playing guitar on that one. The rhythm, the down, 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 down. And like that song didn't have that in there at all. And, you know, at the time, you know, and people said, well, sometimes Ferry added the simple thing that a lot of things needed. Like there's a lot of people that are so interested in being like cutting edge, but Ferry always seemed to add this kind of like, well, hey, it's missing this simple thing. And
it's so funny because he gets so Baroque in his.
He does, but I just think there's an accessibility to him that like, no matter what the band's doing, you're just like, okay, but there's a tether to like, I don't know if it's reality that I want to say. There's this tether to it. And I know he's a part of all of it. I think he likes getting weird, but I just think he has this kind of, I don't know. It's just like this sense of like normal to him that I really like, that otherwise, you know, isn't there. And it starts with a cover of In the Midnight Hour, which is a Wilson Pickett song. But the song My Only Love is really really great. I mean, it's a great song. I could listen to it all the time. It's extremely hot. It's hot, dude. It's a hot song. Like you know, it's definitely like hand hitting the sweaty like car window in the movie. Like it's definitely that. And what's funny is it's used as a very, very odd needle drop in this movie. I don't know if any of you guys have ever seen it. It's not like a massive, it was kind of an indie movie with Christian Bale and Frances McDormand called Laurel Canyon from 2003. No. A good movie. It's about the Christian Bale is kind of this like straight-laced son of like a hippie mom who's like the hippie mom is just like a rock whore and she's like still getting fucked by like rockers and stuff. But then shockingly, there's some Freudian elements between Christian Bale and his mother, Frances McDormand. And My Only Love by Roxy is playing while she's just getting railed in the room next to him, and he's just like, I should close the door. No, but he's just listening to it. It's actually a really good movie. I like it a lot, but it's just that hearing that song in there is just like I can only think of Frances McDormand just getting like railed, and like it's a good movie. Good movie. I love Over You too. That's a great song.
I like that Over You follows My Only Love.
Yeah, side two, and it's side two. It really does change the pace. You're My Only Love, and then Over You.
Exactly.
It's just
lasted a real long time.
Yeah, it's great. I really love this. And I think their saxophone got a lot more normal and fun. Like where Andy McKay, like I think he realized that the saxophone truly was a sexual device, and it comes in at the perfect times. My Only Love, there's kind of the saxophone solo in there, which is just magnificent. And but I don't know how you guys feel about it. Maybe I'm the biggest Flesh and Blood fan.
What do you think, Si?
I like it. Yeah, it's definitely transition, from where they were going to where they're headed. I think it's not fully fleshed out. Sometimes it's like a little thin sounding for me, but that's just obviously taken with the greater context that it does rock, and I do like it a lot for sure.
Yeah, and
I want to listen to it more. I haven't listened to it nearly enough too.
The bass lines are just unreal in it. I mean, it's just like, and they said they were inspired by like Chic and a lot of these bands that were coming out at the time. The Nile Rodgers stuff, which to me, those bass lines sound better than the Nile Rodgers stuff, but it's just me. But these people, they were aware of what was happening around them, which I like, and I think it's totally fine. Like there's times on Roxy albums where they'll just take like Day Tripper, the riff from like Day Tripper, and just insert it in there. I think on the first album they do that, and it's totally fine. Like Brian Ferry's like, he's kind of a collage artist at times.
Oh yeah,
absolutely.
And I think that's great. I mean, and Ferry released that cover in 1973. He released that cover album, which I think is really good. I like the Beach Boys cover, Don't Worry Baby. I liked a lot of his covers. Like they're definitely, I don't know that they're better than the original. I don't go that far, but like it was just quite good. It seemed like he really had appreciation for a lot of these songs, and you just hear as their sound is growing. It's not even taking classic songs, it's taking current things and kind of going like, well, Roxy's so individual that if we take something from the current era, it's still going to sound like Roxy, and we'll blend it in a way that to where it doesn't just sound like, Chic or any of these other bands, but could be played at the same club, which I think is really cool.
Yeah. They like any good band, they really found a way to make all of these popular sounds their own and digest them, and not just spit out a straight disco record or a straight rock and roll album or a straight 80s smooth listening piece. They're always unique.
Yeah. Oh man, yeah, for sure. It's just I don't know. I you know what, guys? Anybody, make sure you guys don't skip over that album, because I don't know. I bring it up to people. Somebody, when I was preparing for the episode, somebody was like, "What's your favorite one?" I said, besides Avalon, Flesh and Blood, and they're like, "Really?" I was like, "Oh man, I don't know." To me, that was just a hit. I was just like, I think it was the Highway 1 California Scenic Drive thing. Putting that on, it'll do it, dude. Come on,
that'll do it.
Yeah, Thomas Kincaid, shit hammer, driving down 17-mile drive, just car in neutral, head on the horn, passed out, flicking gravel everywhere. That's hell yeah.
There's the music video.
Yeah. So let's take a break.
Sorry, I'm just reading Brian Ferry's personal life, and pretty base, dude. Political views, dude. Come on.
Let's
yeah,
but let's come back to that.
Yeah, no, I
let's
just
take
had
a-
to-
let's
I
take a
just had to
break, 'cause
interject, dude.
I want to talk about that.
I
Let's,
just let me read one sentence. He
Alright.
expressed an opposition to left-wing bitterness and political correctness. Dude, all right, that's